Welcome back to America Tonight. We have Dean Krasovitsky with us, and we're talking about something pretty significant here that so many of us are dealing with. How do you navigate the role reversal that so many of us face with an aging parent? It's called parenting your parent, and this is a thing that happens to all of us, but there's not a great roadmap for it. Dean knows all about that with his work with Manchester Place Care Homes. And maybe it's time, when you talk about assisted living, to know more about assisted living and how do you do your homework to find the right place. Dean, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So when we make that switch, and so many of us are unprepared for it because we don't want to think about it when we're younger, and then we're faced with the reality of it. What would you say is the first thing that you really need to do when you start to think about assisted living? How do you know when it's time?
Well, we were talking about this with our doctor yesterday, and I think there's a couple things that you need to be aware of. I think the most important piece of information that you need is to know exactly what your parent is facing, whether it's a mental decline, whether it's a physical decline, a little bit of both. And so that's your first challenge, because you don't really know the right questions to ask if you don't know what's going on with your parent. The second thing that you want to look at is how socially involved are they where they live? Is their community fulfilling a part of their life that's important with interaction, with friends, with activities, or are they kind of sequestering themselves by themselves in their room and spending the majority of their time there? So those are probably the two biggest things that you need to understand.
Yeah, so in other words, to make good choices, right? I mean, is the socialization, and I would imagine I'm answering my own question, but you would know even better than I would, the socialization process is important even when you're older, correct?
I think it's probably more important, really, because, loneliness, depression, kind of, being by as you're forgetting, I guess the right way to put it is, as you are forgetting little pieces of your life and you spend more and more time alone in your room instead of being with people that are familiar to you, it's kind of like it's a bit of a rabbit hole that you can fall down. So you need to be able to have social interaction with people. If it's family, it's family. If it's friends, it's friends. It needs to happen in a way that'll keep you engaged. And when you're engaged with other people, those people will know and see some of the things that you're going through, whether it be, oh, she keeps forgetting where she put her car keys, or, oh, she, calls me by the wrong name all the time, or it could be something a little more severe.
Yeah, so when you are talking to people about that, those are some of the questions that you ask, right? About what's happened in the past, what are you looking for? What do you find that most people want to see for their parents? I think we want to know they're safe. That's got to be number one, I would assume. But we want to know, I think, other things, even like food, etc., about where we're putting somebody, correct?
Yeah, that's very important. I think one of the things that I ask people, is, so tell me what's going on with your mother, your father, your loved one. And what I hear probably more than half the time is, well, I'm not really sure, because where they're at now, there's a lot of new faces all the time, and they're not really able to tell me, well, your mom or your dad is not eating very well, or they had a bad day today, or they had a good day today. So a lot of the time, the mental image that a prospective resident will have in their head will be from what their family member was like 5 years ago. And, it's in our lives today, we're all very busy. We all have things going on, and it's very difficult to say, okay, well, I'm going to take my half an hour this week and spend with my mom or my dad and really get a true picture of what their day-to-day is like. And I think that is the biggest challenge facing, families today is, what's going on with my mom and my dad? Because, like for me personally, I have 4 kids, and I'm happily married, and, I'm running around all the time. And I think I have, maybe 2 hours a week where, I don't have to be somewhere probably. That might be a slight exaggeration, but so it's difficult for everybody. And I think when we have our parents or our loved ones at a licensed long-term care facility and they become less appropriate there, no one's really going to tell you until it's too late. It's kind of like everything's great until it's not.
Yeah, boy, so well said. Everything's great until it's not. So Manchester Place Care Homes and everything that you do with assisted living, you have different options, right?
Well, what we try and do is create a real residential environment. So all of our locations are small. They're typically 8 residents. We have a 4-to-1 resident to caregiver ratio, so we're able to really devote good attention to people as they need it. As we've done this, we did it on purpose. We built them small on purpose. We have the smaller ratio on purpose because, that's a real distinction out in the industry. The thing that kind of got us moving forward is, the response from the community has been tremendous. We've never advertised. We typically carry a waiting list, and we're planning to open a larger development here in about a year, which will be still the smaller locations, but instead of having one here and one there and one 2 miles away, they're all going to be on one 3-acre parcel of land in Dallas.
Wow, that makes a lot of sense. And the age range probably can be a little bit all over the map, or maybe not. What's typically the average age?
I've had as young as late 60s, and I've had as old as 104. So
wow.
It kind of is all over. But I would probably say mid-80s to mid-90s is probably where you see a lot of our folks.
Yeah, and how important are the visits from the family? Because I know a lot of places set up family visits or that kind of thing. Do you have special things you do during the year?
Well, what we try and do is we try and create a real home-like environment. So we invite the families to come every day as often as they want. We don't charge them if they want to have dinner or lunch with their family member because we feel that brings, an added dynamic to that person's world. And we do have a few things over the course of the year. We have a holiday party. We do something on the 4th of July. But for the most part, our families are very engaged. And if not there, we have some families that come every day. We have some that come, weekly. And then we have a couple that come, for the family party, and that's about it.
Wow.
But for the most part, the kids are very engaged.
Yeah, and I bet as you've gone along the way, too, you've probably learned some things you didn't know. What was the biggest surprise to you about the assisted care business, I'll say? Well,
I'll tell you that it's not really an assisted care that opened my eyes. What happened was I had a resident who had severe Parkinson's, and he was hunched over, and he was a big Cowboy fan, and I was over at the house one Sunday. This is about 5 years ago. This is right when we started. We started about 6 years ago. And we couldn't figure out the TV. And at some age, my son became better at manipulating all the inputs than I did. So I brought him in to do that. And he was working with John and to find the Cowboy game. And I was looking at John's wall, and on his wall was a signed letter from Harry Truman thanking him for valor during World War II as a saboteur in the hang gliding corps. And then next to that was another letter from the United Nations, and it really opened my eyes that that's not the guy in room 3, that's John. And John has a very, very interesting history, and he had a very big life, and somebody needs to recognize that. And I think that was kind of a changing moment in my life.
Yeah. Oh, I love that story. So true. Everybody has a story. What's the story? And just because they're older, they've probably had many interesting things that could be shared. That's for sure. This has been a great conversation. Manchester Place Care Homes. You can check it out at manchesterplacecarehomes.com. Pretty easy. Dean, thanks so much for coming on America Tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you for your time. My pleasure.
All right, pretty interesting stuff. It's something that a lot of people don't think about. It's like we said, all of a sudden you look in the mirror and every day, hey, we're all getting older. And before you know it, you've got a parent that you have to figure out, geez, what am I going to do? and do they need to be in assisted living? And I saw some of these places, and that's why I had Dean on. This is another edition of It's Your Business, and I love the way they do that. It really feels like a home. Individual homes is what it is, and as he mentioned, the people are people. They're just a little bit older, and they have their independence, and they have things they do together, and I just absolutely love it. I love the business model for sure. Stay with us. Much more coming your way next on America Tonight.